So hello everyone, thank you so much for being here with me today. We're going to talk about something incredibly close to my heart, which is ADHD in the American classroom. I know it's funny for me saying it's in the American classroom because I'm not teaching in America, I'm teaching in China, but I can't say that I know enough about China to, you know, look at it from a Chinese perspective. So yeah, my classroom is more of an American classroom, so that's what I'm going to be talking to you from. So, let's start. I hope it doesn't crash again. So, first I want to look at some numbers on what exactly is happening with ADHD. Currently, the USA has over 6.1 million children with ADHD. It is... Thank you, Alexa. It is currently... there are so many children with it. Which, let's put it into perspective. Right now we have the coronavirus, which is affecting over 1 million people on the entire planet. And we're worried about that, which we should be. But this is something that children are dealing with every single day. And it's just 6.1 million children that are affected with it. Adults are also affected with this. And yeah, when their kids or their children or their friends or family are affected with this, it affects a lot of people. So this is something that affects honestly, I think everyone knows at least one person. But that is me speaking, not the data. So currently, only 77% are being treated. The other 23% have stated that they either haven't responded or they're saying that they're not really receiving any medication or any counseling or training or anything like that. 10% of all children nationwide are diagnosed, which has gone up by 43% as of 2015, which is kind of crazy. If you think about it, it also, the same study from Public Health GWU also stated that more girls are facing this than boys. The rise went up in girls rather than just boys. And it's not associated with any one ethnicity or any one way of being raised. It does not see color or culture. It is something that happens to anyone. Let's keep moving on, make sure we're not going to use up all of our time with just the first few things. So why are the numbers rising? Is this something that we should be worried about? First, yes, it is something that we should be worried about, but it is possibly not rising for any big, terrible, awful reason. It could just be that there's more testing available. Oh, excuse me, you probably can't see the text of my PPT underneath my head. So it says, but why might be. Excuse me. There is a wider availability for testing through the ACA, meaning that more and more people are being tested. It's not just for the rich anymore. It's not just for the people who go to the great schools that are getting tested for this. This is now, I can't say everywhere, but it's a lot of places that are getting tested now. It is, so the numbers are more realistic rather than the optimistic view that we held a few years ago. Doctors are more willing to understand this condition. They're more willing to diagnose. Like, for example, think about 20 years ago. How many children at that point were being diagnosed with this? How many children were given these false negatives? How many kids do you know you looked at and you said, there's something with them? They need something different than what we are offering. And they didn't receive it, and they were bothered by it for the rest of their lives. Well, past 20 years, I should say. How many of these kids are given false negatives? Recently doctors are realizing this mistake, and they are properly diagnosing this. It might not be that the numbers are rising because because humankind is suffering more or getting worse. It's more that we are understanding the problems that we are facing and have been facing for years. So also, another really cool thing, and this is something for me is really close to my heart, is children with high-risk births are surviving at larger rates. I was born in 1996. Um, and in that year, I was born 1 month early, which means that I had a lot of lung problems for the first few years of my life. But because of medical technology, my very tiny, very, very, very tiny baby self made it to adulthood. I was diagnosed with failure to thrive. I was diagnosed with numerous physical and mental problems as a baby. And because of medical science, I am here and I'm alive and I'm fine and I overcame everything. Um, it's the same with children who had high risk births. Children who 30 years ago would not have made it past the first 2 weeks or the first 2 years of life. Now they're finally entering school. Kids like that now, they have a fighting chance at life because of medical science. But they're also more at risk for having ADHD due to the trauma that they faced at birth, due to the trauma that they may have faced for the first few months of their life when they should have still been in utero. That causes a lot of trauma on a kid. So yeah, of course, they're more at risk for having ADHD. They're surviving, these statistics go up. But that's not a bad thing. Just, let's look at that. So we might want to know a little bit more about what it is. IDEA classifies it under other health impairments, which it can cause some legal problems, depending on where you're at and how they look at the law. We're going to be looking at the types of ADHD, and we're going to have to go through these really quickly. We don't have as much time as I would like. So there are 2 different types. I'm not going to read every single thing on these. We're just going to discuss a few of them. You can look at it, pause the video if you want, or take a picture of it. So let's look at predominantly inattentive versus predominantly hyperactive impulsive. There is a third version of this that we will talk about afterwards. First off, each list, you don't have to have every single thing on each list to be marked as having that kind of ADHD. You only have to have six. This is how we do it here in China. Six of these things on each side. Well, 6 of these things on one side means that is what you are diagnosed with. 6 things on the other side is what you are diagnosed with. So let's look at 1 or 2 on each side and then how it would make it difficult for a student in school. For predominantly hyperactive impulsive, think about having to stay seated. If you have a 40-minute class with a 40-minute class and then a small period break and then another 40-minute lesson time. I'm not sure how it works in the public school in America. I was homeschooled. But if you're being told you have to sit down for long periods of time, quietly, the predominantly hyperactive impulsive ADHD child will have nonstop problems in the classroom because they need to move. And it would make it incredibly difficult for them to focus on the lesson. They don't know how to wait for a turn. They interrupt other children. It's not because they're being malicious. It's because their brains can't handle it. They have to do it this way. It is them. They might blurt out answers prematurely, as it says above that, which, again, in a cookie cutter system where you're supposed to raise your hand, it's difficult for these kids. To go to the other side, we have kids that have problems with making careless mistakes, paying attention to detail, being organized, and these are all things that you have to be in a regular school setting. You have to be organized with what you're doing. You have to pay attention to the verbal details that the teacher is given, as well as what is on the blackboard. Kids can't pay attention to that as much. And a lot of the times, children with ADHD will also have other medical issues that they are facing. Could be dyslexia, for example. A child who is dyslexic can't read very well as write, which added on with any kind of ADHD, it's almost impossible. It feels impossible for them with the system that we've created. It's difficult to keep focused. Now, this third version that I mentioned earlier, I didn't write anything about it. I think it's just important for us to think about it. It is a mixture of both sides. So, yeah, it's a mixture. So you could have 3 or 4 on one side and 3 or 4 on the other, and that would be a blended version of this. It is, yeah. So our next question that we want to focus on is asking if it's the same for everyone, which we should honestly know by now that everyone is different. We're individuals, which means that our diagnoses are also individualized. It does not have the same characteristics or degree of behavior. As you can see, like I said before, that last page had a varied list of some of the possibilities that someone with ADHD could be facing. And it doesn't ever state that you will always have problems at this degree. It could be even light problems. It is a spectrum, just like almost every other disease out there. And it's unfair to state that just because your diagnosis does not place you on a higher level of difficulty, it's unfair to say that that means that your diagnosis is not as important to be helped. Let's look on something really, really important. Different ideas for how we can make the whole classroom happy. I have students that have ADHD. I have students who are autistic. I do not teach a class to the other children and then have a separate thing for them. I like to make sure that they feel just as included as everybody else. It is so important to make sure that they know that they are the same, that we don't look at them as being othered. We don't make them different. They are part of our classroom. They are just as important as any other child. So when you make your lessons, please, please don't make a lesson for the normal kids and a lesson for the other kids. That's mean and it's wrong, honestly. Do something for the whole classroom. Little kids can't focus that long anyways. Have lots and lots and lots of different ideas. We're going to go through some of these ideas. Some of my favorites would definitely be differentiated instruction. Like I said before, we were talking about a kid that couldn't sit for very long. Give them a ball. Let them sit on the exercise ball and bounce. If that's distracting for other children, move them to the back of the classroom so that they can bounce. Or have a section of the room for children that need to bounce. It's not othering them, it is giving them the personal choice to go there. Flexible seating, again, that was flexible seating, not differentiated instruction. They actually can go hand in hand, honestly. Part of differentiated instruction is flexible seating. So I guess, yeah, they work together. So have a way for the kid to seat themselves differently while they're taking a quiz or while they're reading a book, and use flexible seating to achieve that. That's what I meant to say. So don't stay on one task for too long. Take lots of breaks. Little kids don't have very long attention spans, and they learn through play. So give them a break. Between activities or between lessons, give them something to focus on that is not difficult. And give them verbal warnings when you're about to change something. Don't just say, "Oh, I know that you love this. Okay, it's done. Let's move on." Say, "Okay, I'm going to give you 1 more minute to enjoy what we are on, and then we can move on to the next thing on our list." And you can provide them with a list of what those things are so that they can emotionally prepare for it or mentally prepare for that. Or if you're a kid that does not react well, if you have a child that doesn't react well to what they're reading, then verbally tell them, "This is what we will do after 30 seconds. So that is about all the information that we have time for today. If you gave me an hour, we could have a really long conversation about this, but unfortunately I had 15 minutes. So please take a look at my references. Aren't they nice? Thank you so much for being here with me today, and I am glad that we can have this time together. Thank you so much. Bye. Let's turn it off.